The Lady's Maid by Katherine Mansfield. Welcome to MagicMingle, where we help you learn English through captivating stories from classic literature. In today's video, we're diving into The Lady's Maid by Katherine Mansfield, a beautifully written story filled with emotion, loyalty, and personal sacrifice. The story is told from the perspective of Ellen, a devoted maid who has spent her life serving a wealthy lady. Through a casual conversation, Ellen reveals her life's journey, sharing memories of her childhood, her early days working for her lady, and the many moments of quiet devotion that have shaped her existence. One of the most poignant parts of Ellen's story is when she recalls how she gave up her own chance at love and marriage to remain by her lady's side, a decision that defines her deep sense of loyalty and duty. As we follow Ellen's reflections, we see how the bond between a servant and her employer can become more than just a professional relationship. It becomes a story of love, sacrifice, and emotional attachment. Mansfield masterfully explores the delicate balance between personal desires and the responsibilities that come with a life of service. This touching story not only enriches your understanding of human relationships, but also helps you improve your English by introducing rich vocabulary and meaningful dialogue. Stay with us until the end as we unpack the layers of this classic tale, The Lady's Maid. It was 11 o'clock when I knocked on the door. I hoped I wasn't disturbing you, ma'am. You weren't asleep, were you? I've just made my lady her tea, and there's an extra cup, so I thought you might like it. Oh no, don't worry, ma'am. I always make a cup of tea for myself too. My lady drinks hers in bed, right after her prayers. It warms her up. I usually put the kettle on when she kneels down, and I tell it, no need to rush, we've got plenty of time. But the kettle always boils long before my lady finishes. You see, we know so many people, and she prays for every single one of them. She even keeps their names in a little red book. Oh, it drives me mad sometimes. Whenever someone new visits and my lady says, "Ellen, get me my little red book," I think, here we go again, someone else keeping her out of bed. She won't use a cushion either, always kneels on the hard carpet. It bothers me, especially since I know her so well. I've tried sneaking the eider down under her knees once, but she gave me such a look. "Did our Lord have an eider down, Ellen?" she asked. And I almost replied, "No, but he didn't have your bad back." How awful of me to think, wasn't it? But she's too good, ma'am. When I tucked her in tonight, seeing her lying there with her hands folded outside the blanket, looking so peaceful, I couldn't help but think, you look just like your mother did when I laid her out. Yes, ma'am, it was all left to me. Oh, she looked beautiful. I styled her hair softly around her forehead, with delicate curls, and placed a little bunch of purple pansies at her neck. I'll never forget those pansies. They were perfect. When I saw my lady tonight, I thought, if only those pansies were there, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It was only in her last year, ma'am. When she got weaker, she started losing things. She could never sit still, always pacing, looking around the house. She'd stop and say, "I've lost it, I've lost it." I would say, "Come on, I'll help you with your patience game," but she'd grab my hand and whisper, "Find it for me, Ellen, please." It was heartbreaking. No, she never really recovered. She had a stroke in the end. Her last words were slow and soft. Look in. There. Look in, and then she was gone. Some girls might have noticed these things, ma'am, but not me. You see, I don't have anyone but my lady. My mother passed away from consumption when I was 4, and I was raised by my grandfather, who owned a hairdressing shop. I used to sit under the table all day, watching the assistants style customers' hair and copying them with my doll. They were so kind to me, making little wigs for my doll, the latest fashions and all. I was quiet as a mouse. The customers didn't even know I was there. Sometimes I'd peek out from under the tablecloth just to see what was going on. But one day, I found a pair of scissors and, would you believe it, I cut off all my hair. Snipped it off in bits like a mischievous little monkey. My grandfather was furious. He grabbed the hot tongs and shut my fingers in them. I've still got the scar. He was so proud of my hair. He used to sit me on the counter before the customers came in and style it beautifully. Big, soft curls. The assistants would gather around, and I'd sit there so serious, holding the penny he gave me, but he always took it back afterward. Poor grandfather, he was so angry with me. I ran away that day. I was so scared. I must have looked ridiculous, with my hair all chopped off and my hand wrapped up in my apron. No, grandfather never got over it. He couldn't stand the sight of me after that. He couldn't even eat if I was in the room, so my aunt took me in. She was a tiny, crippled upholsterer. She had to stand on the furniture to cut the fabric. That's how I met my lady. I was 13 at the time, but I didn't feel like a child. My lady gave me a uniform with collars and cuffs right from the start. Oh, but there was one time I did feel like a child, and it was funny. My lady's nieces were staying with her, and we were in Sheldon, near the fair. My lady said, "Ellen, take the girls for a donkey ride." We went down to the fair, and the girls were too shy to ride the donkeys, so we just stood and watched. Those donkeys were beautiful. I'd never seen any like them before. They had silver gray coats, red saddles, and bells jingling on their ears. The girls were older than me, but they were having so much fun, not a care in the world. I wanted to ride one so badly, but I couldn't. What would I look like in my uniform on a donkey? All day, I couldn't stop thinking about those donkeys. That night, after the lights were out, I pretended to be asleep and suddenly shouted, "I do want to go on a donkey. I want a donkey ride." I thought they wouldn't laugh at me if they thought I was just dreaming. No, ma'am, I never thought about it after that. Well, there was a time I almost got married. His name was Harry, and he owned a little flower shop nearby. Funny, isn't it? Me, such a lover of flowers. I used to be in and out of his shop all the time. We'd argue about how to arrange the flowers, and that's how it started. You wouldn't believe the flowers he brought me. Lilies of the valley, no less. We were going to get married, live over the shop, and I was going to arrange the window displays. I used to dream about it. Christmas, with a holly motto in the window, and Easter lilies arranged perfectly. The day came when we were supposed to pick out furniture. I'll never forget it. It was a Tuesday. My lady wasn't herself that day. She kept wrapping herself up and asking if it was cold, and her nose looked pinched. I didn't want to leave her, and I was worrying the whole time. Finally, I asked if I should postpone the trip. "Oh no, Ellen," she said, "you mustn't disappoint your young man." She was always so cheerful, never thinking of herself. It made me feel even worse. When she dropped her handkerchief and bent down to pick it up herself, I knew something was wrong. She never did things like that. "What are you doing?" I cried, rushing to help her. "Well," she said with a smile, "I need to start practicing." It was all I could do not to cry. I pretended to polish the silver at her dressing table, but I couldn't hold it in any longer. I asked if she'd rather I didn't get married. "No, Ellen," she said in that soft voice of hers, "not for the world." But as she said it, I saw her in the mirror. She didn't know I could see her. She put her hand on her heart, just like her mother used to do, and lifted her eyes. Oh, ma'am, it broke my heart. When Harry came to pick me up, I had his letters and the ring ready. He'd given me a little brooch, a silver bird with a heart and a dagger. I opened the door and handed everything back. "It's over," I said. "I can't leave my lady." Harry turned as white as a sheet. I slammed the door before he could say a word. I stood there trembling, waiting until I knew he'd gone. When I finally opened the door, he was gone. I ran into the street, just as I was, in my apron and slippers. I stood in the middle of the road, staring after him. People must have thought I was crazy. "Oh, what's that? The clock's struck already? I've kept you up too long, ma'am. Can I tuck in your feet?" I always tuck in my lady's feet before bed. She says, "Good night, Ellen. Sleep well and wake up early." I don't know what I'd do if she didn't say that now. Sometimes I wonder, what would I do if something happened to her? But thinking doesn't help anyone, does it? No, I pull myself together and say, "Now, Ellen, enough of that. Don't be silly."
Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, and share our channel Magic Mingle with your friends to enjoy more magical stories.